Hi, my name is Stephanie McPhail, and I am a love and life success coach. I am so excited to be here on Soulful Self-Care Conversations today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza at Women's Successful Living, and we are back with another episode of Soulful Self-Care Conversations. And these are always so much fun. I'm really loving the new vibe that we're doing here with the renaming of the show from Conversations with Pearl, because we really are deep diving into some really soulful self-care conversations. Like, how are you pouring into your soul so that you can pour into others that you love and care for, including whether it's your personal life, your business, or your professional career. And so today's no different. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Stephanie McPhail, and she is a toxic relationship recovery expert. She is certified crisis counselor and coach with a double master's degree in health and education and a bachelor's in psychology. She specializes in helping professional women leave toxic relationships and empower themselves after divorce or breakup so they can stop repeating old patterns, moving forward to be happy, whether single or in a relationship. Stephanie is a host of the top 2.5% new and noteworthy Toxic Love Transformation podcast and the host of a weekly cable show. She is the author of Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt and has been featured on NBC, ABC, Fox, and New York Weekly, just to name a few spots. She is also on the core council of experts for Ayaya University. And I don't know if I said that right, so Stephanie will correct me.
It's Avaya, but that's okay.
Avaya. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today, Stephanie, because truly, like, toxic relationships, it's not even with others, but even with ourselves. We can have a toxic relationship with ourselves too. So we're going to deep dive into that today. So if you're listening to us on podcast platforms, please, drive carefully, but grab a neighbor if you can and sit down and have a cup of tea or coffee with them. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Like and subscribe below, because we want you to hear more of these amazing experts we bring on our show. But grab a pen and paper, because we're going to deep dive. And if you are new to the show, we're going to do something that we do every time we open the show. And if you are watching and listening for the first, second, or millionth time, we're so excited to have you back. So, Stephanie, here we go. I always like to open up with this question. When we're little, I always like to talk to the inner child for a moment when we start on the show. So when we're little girls, we have these big dreams that we want to, grow up and be an astronaut, the president of the United States, a mom, maybe a business person, whatever that looks like for us. And then as we get older and, life starts to happen and we hit the adulthood, that can sometimes change from what that goal was for that little girl inside. So I want to talk to little Stephanie right now, and I would love for you to tell us, what did she want to be when she grew up, and how does that correlate to what the big girl Stephanie's doing today?
Well, okay. So the funniest thing is that what I wanted to be as a little girl is literally what I am. I was a little girl, and I'm like, the first picture I have, it switched in like teenage years, but my original thing is that I wanted to be a teacher. And I had my little green desk with my little chalkboard on it. And I would set up people, like my people, right, in the classroom. And I had them set up in front of me, and I would teach them. And then I would write things on my little whiteboard. And so there's a picture of me, like, with my head, like, on the desk with my students, quote unquote, of my stuffed animals sitting in front of me. And I was actually a teacher for 18 years. And, and in between all that, I have been coaching and doing speaking events and things like that. So I was pretty aware without realizing it.
I love that, because that's so much like my dream. I had the same goal. Growing up, I always thought I wanted to be a teacher. My high school I went to, they actually had this, like, in my senior year of high school, and I graduated in 1982, so I'm really aging myself. But they had this program, we could go do these work things. So I would leave midday at the afternoon, and I'd go to the local elementary school near my high school, and I would help be like a teacher assistant with the elementary school teacher. And so it was always, a lot of fun, because I got to do all these fun things as a teacher, quote unquote. So I would teach a couple of classes to the elementary kids. And so I laughed, because I was telling my friend this just a couple of weeks ago. I was like, yeah, I wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. And if I look back probably the kids that I was gonna be teaching, they're all adult women now that I'm coaching. So it's really cool how that, plays out and correlates together. And so thank you for letting us talk to the little Stephanie for a few minutes.
I
So
love it.
so let's get into the world of toxic relationships. And like I said, we have it with ourselves sometimes, and then and also I think, and you're the expert in this area, but I feel sometimes how we talk to ourselves is also a way of who we attract to ourselves as well, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually this is really funny. So I just did a short TikTok video, Instagram video, where I was at the gym and I literally the video just says, "Hey, someone told me I had a nice ass today at the gym. Can you believe it?" And then I said, "It was me. I was someone." And because I 100% agree with that. How often, I mean, 20-year-old me would have never even thought about myself that way. I would have looked in the mirror as I was working out and been like nitpicking all the things I didn't like about my body. And so often, I mean, and our body's the most beautiful, precious gift. We can't do anything without it. So why are we so mean to it? And so I really, it really is amazing what we've been trained of how to talk to ourselves. Because if we're talking to ourselves that way, then it lowers our expectations of who, like, if we don't feel attractive, we're going to let people that are not so nice to us in general come into our lives. We're going to accept things that we shouldn't accept because we don't feel worthy. We don't feel like we should be loved, that we should be accepted for who we are. And so, yeah, I think we are really hard on ourselves. And I think that's something that if we want to create healthier relationships, we've got to start with being less hard on ourselves and fixing that part first.
And it's such a great point, like how we self-talk to ourselves. It reminds me, we're talking about when we're little and things like that. For me, like at a very young age, I learned people pleasing. My dad did 3 tours in Vietnam, so my mom was raising us 3 kids, and so I became that person in third grade. Actually, would take care of my brother and sister while my mom had to go to work, and of course, dad wasn't home, and so that people pleasing came into play, and then that self-talk of, well, I have to take care of others. I have to do for others, otherwise they think I don't like them. All those that I'm selfish, all those thoughts come into play. And for me, I look at my siblings and I see where I was able to sort of break free from it and how their exposure longer term to it changed because my dad came home. I think by the time he got home from Vietnam, I was like around 10 or 12 years old. I was older. And so I was then, I'm babysitting, I'm doing all these things that, get me out of the house, go and play with my friends and things like that. And so at like 17, I tell the story. And if you're listening for the first time, I share the story about actually I've divorced my parents because of their behaviors and the things they've said or done, not just to me, but for my kids as well. But when I look back, I'm blessed that, for whatever reason, God told me, okay, at 17, you're going to be able to go out and live on your own. And, you're going to graduate high school while you're still living at home, but this is what I've got planned for you. And, I often say to my friends, if I had known about emancipation, I might have even done that and got with my girlfriend and her family. But my journey is my journey. And so the self-talk, I'm glad I have that. And I tell myself all the time, I'm thankful for that because the toxicity of what my sister and brother went through with the way my father treated my mother and the way my mother accepted it and didn't understand that, your Catholic beliefs are great. And if I'm Catholic and everything, however, I don't believe God wants you to stay in a relationship that's a narcissist, behavior, gaslighting situation. And so watching my siblings grow up in that because my brother was 7 years younger than I am. So he had more exposure to my dad's behaviors that I see some of that in him. My brother's an amazing guy, so don't get me wrong, but I do see some of the tendencies that he works on because of being around that toxic relationship with our parents. And so it's interesting because when I met my husband, who we've been together 40 years now, I remember when I first met him and we were living together, we would have a disagreement. And I learned the only thing I knew for communication was you shut down and don't say anything. You just get mad at the person for sometimes 2 weeks at a time, and you come home and, oh, you're not walking eggshells anymore. And so my husband was not from that kind of family. It's like you talked everything out, you worked it, had communication. And so I would do the shutdown. And so he would be like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't want to talk to you right now. And so finally he taught me by him doing this, it taught me open up, speak and share. he would start having the conversation for me. And he'd be like, "Yeah, well, I think this." And I was like, "I would not have said that to you, right?" And so he was able to show me, I mean, we met when I was 19 years old, but he was able to show me what a true good relationship looks like, and but I feel like if I had not had that opportunity to move out and do the things I did, I might have been in other relationships, especially from a female perspective, that were men that were like my father, and I think, we talk oftentimes about that, again, going back to that little girl, but what up until that 7 years of age, it affects those relationships that we may have in the future. And so what would love to hear your thoughts on that and have a conversation around that. And then also, I know that that's what you help women, because I feel like I had a really good friend that was in a really bad toxic relationship, and watching the struggles for years and years to get out of it, to break free, leave and go back, leave and go back. It's like that rubber band. And so I would love to, dive into that. So I'm going to open up. You start us where you want to start us on all that.
Well, there was so much good stuff there. I mean, one of the things of just like being the oldest, we find a lot of the clients that we work with, and I was in the same boat as you are. I was the one who took care of the rest of the family because parents couldn't handle it for whatever reason. They didn't have emotionally couldn't. They were, had their own stuff going on. They were busy with work, but I was the one who was very much the go between. So I took care of my younger siblings. I also left the house at 19 to move out and go live on my own. So, I get that part. You are very much not the norm for being able to get out and marry a great guy. So kudos to him and kudos to you, because that is a beautiful, amazing thing. That is not the common thing. Normally, what people do is they go and they find what home feels like. And if home feels stressful and overwhelming and having to prove yourself, that's what we subconsciously go out and look for, because that's what we think is normal. So, one of the things, like, so you had a friend that was going that back and forth. The reason why she was doing that is because home probably felt stressful and overwhelming, and it felt like something you had to prove, and it felt like it gave her like anxiety. And so when she found that in a partner, she was like, "Oh, that's what love is. Let me try to make this work." And so what we do is we literally recreate those same patterns of childhood into our adult relationships. And until we heal what home feels like, and so for me, home is it's what's in my heart, and my what's in my heart, my home is, for me it was, well, love was uncomfortable. So therefore my childhood, that was what home was. And then once you heal that part, you're like, wait, home should be easygoing. Home should be safe. Home should be the place that you go to unwind and you don't have to deal with all the craziness that's going on in the world. When you create that subconscious feeling of what it is, then you don't allow the other stuff. The other stuff comes in and you're like, nope, not feeling it, not into it. And you're not afraid of speaking up for yourself, because you know that you are worthy. And you know that if this relationship doesn't work out, you will be more than happy on your own and more than willing and able to find another relationship that's going to better suit you. Most of us are so afraid of being alone and so afraid that we're the problem that we settle for breadcrumbs and we accept things that we should never accept.
I'm just sitting there going, mic drop all over the place. Like, you said so many things. Yes, first of all, I know I am very blessed. I am completely 100% blessed. I was also blessed with amazing, amazing in-laws. Even my in-law family. I don't call them in-law family really anymore. But even from that side of the perspective, and I tell, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they're not here anymore. But I used to tell them all the time. One of the extra blessings I had was I got to see what true parenthood looked like and true love look like, from family and parenthood. And so now in today's world, when I talk about how I divorced my parents, and a lot was because of behaviors. I literally, I physically wrote an obituary to my father and sent it to all my siblings. And just like 3 days ago, he found me on Telegram and sent me this message. I'm like, you need to leave me alone. I have forgiven you, but deathbed forgiveness does not happen with me. That's between you and God.
Mm.
And so people can understand it. And then my mom, I had stretched my mom for a little bit, long arm from my life because of her behaviors. And when she came back in and she thought some of the things out of love we were trying to do for her, she wanted to use it in other ways, because her end game, again, being a narcissist, was something totally different than what we're trying to provide for her. I was like, I can't do this. I need to make those, relationships on those boundaries. And people will say to me, this is so interesting. I've had 3 or 4 people say to me, especially like when I speak at events and I share the story, well, they're your parents. How can you divorce your parents? And I look at them and I go, okay, let me ask you it this way. If they were my spouse and my partner, would you say I should stay with that person? And they look back and they take a step back and they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I go, exactly. We have a right to choose. Once we, like you said, once I know in my soul, my heart, what my home is in my heart, I love how you said that too. What my home was in my heart, I knew the relationships I needed to have or not have. And I don't have regrets. I know that I could put my head down at night. No, I did everything and anything for both those relationships. And it's not to say the door's never completely closed, but it's on them to show their actions. And if their actions can't match up to my expectations, then I have a fence around my life for them right now, but I really want to hone into what you said home feels like, because you're right. Our home growing up, it's what we go search for oftentimes. And until and it's interesting, we keep going back to that inner child, but until we heal that stuff that we grew up with. And I laugh, I share about this in another one of my podcast episodes where I had this small group, it's called the Shiro League, and it came out of COVID. I saw this need where, you know, I saw women online in bad relationships, in relationships of I got to take care of my kids all day long, like this overwhelm. I call it that I need a Calgon take me away moment. I'm not allowed to leave my house. Like this overwhelm. And so many were like, I didn't realize how much I didn't like my spouse. I didn't realize how much our relationship was bad for me. I saw that showing up. So we started this Shirley program. And one of the things that we're trying to do in that it stands for strong, happy, empowered, radiant, and original self. In one of the projects we were trying to work on was like healing the inner child. And it was so interesting. We actually had to stop it, Stephanie. We actually had to stop the program, that quadrant, because they kept blocking and blocking. And I'm like, you guys are just not ready to open this. And until you're ready to open, I had one or two that were like, we continued on separately, but they were like, oh, my life was fine. Everything was fine. I'm like, you are saying that, but you're not believing it. You're in your heart of hearts, you're not believing it. And so I love what you said. Like we have to heal that inner soul. And so when you work, when you work with your clients, like they're coming in and, like I remember my girlfriend, she really struggled. Like, well, I'm never going to find anybody that loves me. And, who's going to love me because I'm so broken, right? All these things. And if you're listening to us and you're hearing and telling her that self, first of all, I just want to say you're loved and you can heal. Just want to say that right now. So Stephanie, will you talk to that lady that's like listening to us right now and maybe having those thoughts for us?
Okay, so I have that conversation daily with clients. This is, you are not alone in feeling that is a very common thing. And so anyone, if they're maybe still in that relationship and they're like, I feel so alone, but I'm afraid to leave because then I really will be alone, or they're going through the process, or on the other side, there's all these fears that come up. But you have been alone. You've just been in a relationship. You've been with someone where you feel alone. That actually feels way worse than you being alone and out of the relationship. Because here's what healing, or here's the fun part of healing. One of the things that I want everyone to think about is, what are your friendships like? What are the things that you enjoy doing? For a lot of us, our our side gig, if you will, was working on the relationship. We're spending hours of energy, of time, of everything in that relationship, trying everything to make it work. And so we are focusing on that instead of focusing on ourselves. And so because of that, we don't do the things that we enjoy doing. We don't have those groups of friendships anymore. Maybe we surround ourselves with other people who are also in unhealthy relationships. Maybe we've lost those relationships because the healthy ones don't want to deal with it anymore because they don't like what they're seeing either. Maybe we've never experienced a healthy relationship. Maybe we've never put ourselves first. Maybe we've never had healthy boundaries. So we want to look at, the first thing is look at where you're at. So what kind of friendships do you have? What kind of outlets do you have to really help you go out there and know who you are? So that's something that's really important to do. Another thing is that I come from a very holistic perspective. So I also want you to look at how much, so you'll see me every once in a while, I'm sipping on a green smoothie. I make everybody have an anti-inflammatory green smoothie. It's made with flaxseed, spinach, fruit, water, all sorts of good stuff. But it's there because I had so many health issues when I was dealing with this toxicity, because toxicity causes inflammation. And if you look at lupus, if you look at actually even MS, if you look at cancers, you look at all those kinds of things, some of the root causes are inflammation, and stress causes direct inflammation. So it depends on what your family history is and what you're more prone to. But we tend to see, I've seen a lot of women with breast cancer. I've seen a lot of clients that have had different types of like lupus or those kinds of autoimmune disorders. And so there's all these health issues come up. So we want to make sure that you're taking care of you. You're going to the gym. I don't care. You don't have to do like a crazy workout. You can walk at the gym. Go to get enough water. Most of my clients are prunes. They come to me and they're drinking 20 ounces of water a day. Ladies, 96 ounces of water every day. I know that sounds crazy, but that's actually how much we're supposed to have. So, and you can do it. And I promise that when you do it, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I could drink that much water. But those kind of things, because we don't have time to make that. Wait, oh, I'll take that back. We say we don't have time. We do. We're just not using our time effectively. So those are two really big things of just learning how to take care of ourselves. And I'll just say a third thing is making sure that we practice the pause. And what I mean by that, because most of us don't have boundaries. And so practicing the pause is a good way to practice not using up all of our energy on everybody else. So if somebody says, hey, can you bake cookies for the cookie sale tomorrow? Your immediate response might be like, sure, of course I can. I want, because we want to feel needed. We want to feel worthy. So if we practice the pause, instead we say, let me get back to you. And then even if it's 5 minutes later, if we think about it, how am I going to feel? Does that overwhelm me? Does that make my heart pound in my chest? We really check in with ourselves, and then we can come back and say, you know what, actually, I have too much going on. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that I can't, but maybe the next time, good luck with the cookie exchange. Or I can't wait. I love baking cookies. I'm going to do it tonight. I have no problem with it. But check in, because so often we say yes to things that we should say no to, and we say no to things that we should say yes to.
I am going to remember, I wrote down practice the pause. I love that part there. And everything you shared too about, about taking that pause is so important. But like what you said, the relationship and you're right, toxicity, all of that happens. And yes, you can drink 96 ounces of water. I was sitting here laughing going, I haven't made myself do that recently, but I need to get back on track with that, because it's so true. And you're right. Like, you spend so much more time on that relationship instead of the relationship with yourself. And so if you're listening to us right now, if you were to stop and say, if I set that relationship aside and really started working on me, does that make me happy? That's one of the things that I do with my clients when I start working with my clients is, I like when you talk about how does home feel, and does it light me up kind of thing. And I make my clients do a joy list, and I'm like, and they'll laugh. They go, oh, I can get that done. I'm like, oh, no, no. Your first 6 weeks with me are going to be identifying 10 things on your list. I'm like, why is it going to take me 6 weeks to do 10 things? I'm like, because we're going to break it down. Like, you can tell me like going to the beach brings you joy, but why does it bring you joy? And then you give me that answer and be like, well, why does that bring you joy? I'm going to, really break it down. So it's interesting as we do that, and I watch and I help my clients and coach the women I do through that. Oftentimes, especially when it comes to relationships, they'll identify that, oh, that relationship, when, that job, whatever that relationship is, or even the one with self is not healthy for me. I'm not taking time to pause. I'm not taking time to say no to something. I'm not understanding that no is a complete sentence, and I can say it as happy as I say yes. And as we start working on that and, start putting self first, then I'm still going to go back to that's how home feels. Like, it starts feeling good. The pause, I take it to another extreme. At least once a quarter, I take a what I call staycation. I'm actually taking a kind of a mini one this weekend. I'm actually leaving. I'm recording this with you on a Wednesday. I'm leaving tomorrow, which is a Thursday, to go to Pennsylvania. Which it's when I recorded this, you guys, it was very, very cold up there, and I'm leaving Tampa, Florida, for the cold. But I'm going, one, getting some time away for myself, but two, helping one of my clients / friends launch her first event she's ever holding. And to have that space that, it's something I encouraged her on. I'm like, oh, it's a great thing for me to kind of get away. And, that pause. I love taking staycations. I love taking that little mini, and even it doesn't mean you have to go somewhere exotic. It just be going to the beach for the day, or going for a walk or park, whatever that is for you, or just sitting outside for 10 minutes. I think, like you said, we have to remember that to show up and find home in our heart, we've got to find a way to put ourselves first. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, I mean, I recommend, so like when I work with clients, I have them do a daily accountability sheet because again, we tend to be terrible at self-care. It's like, what, I have to make myself a priority? That feels so weird. I want to focus on everybody else. And I'll tell you right now, that's an avoidance technique because looking at ourselves feels really uncomfortable. So like lean in instead of leaning away. But one of the things is like, what have I done to take care of myself today? So, having the green smoothies, drinking your water, getting your exercise in, having some meditation, doing some of those things that really take care of you once a week. When's your break? If you're not going to slow down, you're not going to be able to keep going at the level that you're going. There's a lot of studies that even the highest level executives, they have to, like, if they don't make themselves slow down, they actually get sick. They have burnout. They have all these other issues that come up. So once a week. And if you can't do it for a full day, a half a day. Sundays for me are my slow days. It tends to be like I stay in bed, I'll be on my phone in the morning. Like I have a big breakfast. I don't really do that. Like everything is slower. I just kind of relax into wear my pajamas during, as long as I want. That's kind of how my day works. And then like it could be once a month if you can do that, or maybe it's every few months. Go away for a weekend, do something where you're rejuvenating, you're hanging out with friends, you're going somewhere different, but you're having a little adventure because life is not meant to be the same boring thing every single day. We've got to have something to look forward to reward yourself for, to say like, hey, this is life, is to be able to go see new things and have new experiences and share new stories with different people. I mean, that's a great, and now if you're an introvert, you're like, that sounds terrible. Even for you introverts, you should also be looking to interact with new people. Yes, having your time by yourself to, recharge, but everybody, we are social creatures. Find your people that you can feel totally safe with and comfortable with and go have those adventures by yourself. Find other people to do them with, but go and have those adventures.
You just remind me of two stories that's so important. So I'm going to talk to the person who's, an everyday person like us. I'm going to talk to that professional person for a second because it reminded me of two stories. One's mine and one's Megan Trainor. When she had her first child, I don't know if you've heard the story, which talks about how she didn't love her body. Like she just was like, she didn't love her body. And she was going to a therapist, and she had shared the story where her therapist like, I want you to stand in front of the mirror naked. And I want you to find something beautiful in your body. Right. And she's like, oh, I don't want to stand there. Listen, if you're listening to us right now and I told you to stand in front of your mirror naked, how does it make you feel? It doesn't feel comfortable for some of us, right? So she's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And she said, I think it took her maybe 2 weeks. Don't quote me on it. But she said, all of a sudden, she's like, oh, I have that role there because I gave birth to my son, So to identify, yeah, when we look at ourselves and maybe you look at it as a flaw, it's really not a flaw, it's something amazing. I mean, like for me, we lost our son, it'll be 3 years ago this July in a tragic car accident. And I remember probably about 6 months to maybe a year after he passed, I remember on this one eye, I had like these little wrinkles. And I was like, where did have to go? Like, I'm looking in the mirror, where did those come from? And I realized that when I equate it to like the timing, I'm like, oh, those are the tears that I shed. Those are the markings of the tears that I shed in the loss of Matthew. And so it's interesting, like what you said about those stories about how they don't have to define us, but they're beautiful things that are on us. We look at them as flaws, but they've got a beautiful story if you really sit down and think about it. And then the other end of the spectrum, like if you're a professional person and you have a team, I remember I worked for a telecom company. I'm really going to age myself here. This is before you could go online and make your payment online. You had to mail your check in. It was when you had to pay for your long distance service on your telephone and your landline. I had a team that we would have to process the payments before the end of the month for them. And we were salaried and we were required to dress in three-piece suits to come to work. And so the last like 7 days of the month, 10 days of the month, my staff, we would be at the office till sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I started seeing the burnout, like you're talking about that whole burnout, like I'm here all day long. I got to be here at 8:30 in the morning. So I was like, I got to do something. This is long before I even thought about coaching or none of this I do today. And I start dividing my team up into groups and like, okay, at this time you go for a walk. At this time you go for a walk. And interesting enough, my other team leads from other departments were like, oh, my staff is getting mad because your staff is going for walks and they already get lunch. I'm like, well, if your staff wants to stay and help us process payments till midnight, I'd be happy to have people on and I don't have to give my staff those breaks. But of course it was always no. But I realized, we have to do things like that to uplift others to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. Sometimes we have to force somebody to take care of themselves. Sometimes we have to make that happen and get them out there to do that and make them take that practice to pause as we're saying. I know that one of the things I always ask my guests for those that are listening and watching is I always ask them to share their Shiro journey. Like, you know, what enabled them? What was the aha moment that was like self-care um had to make a priority in your life? And I would love for you to share about your Shiro journey, if you would, with us for a few minutes. I know part of it came from your divorce and the things that came up from that. So would you share your Shiro journey with the others?
Yeah, so I'm going to do an ultra mini version. And so you'll have to go check out my podcast if you want the full thing, because it definitely is longer. However, I had just went from one unhealthy relationship to another one. I married someone that I should not have. I saw the red flags, ignored them because I thought I was getting older. I thought that this was going to be the best I could get, lowered my standards, all of that. And I got married to someone that strangled me on our wedding night, and I stayed for 5 years trying to make it work. I did everything I possibly could. I researched, I learned, and this is why I'm so passionate about this, because I did all of those things that so many people are probably hearing as well. And it doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be mental, emotional, financial, sexual, any of those other abuses that go on. And I tried so hard that I lost myself in the process and became just a shell of who I was. And after throwing him out, like letting him back in, doing that over and over again, finally one day said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I finally went through with a divorce. And you would think that that would be the beginning of the hero's journey, but it was not. It was actually like the very, very the beginning, because after that I was like, I have a degree in psychology. I'm a smart woman. I'm just never going to do that again. But I kept finding myself in these other unhealthy relationships. And I started to realize that I had some friends that were not so healthy, and there were other things going on in my life. And I ended up getting in a relationship with a guy who ghosted me. And him ghosting me was terrible at the time, but one of the best things that could possibly happen, because my grandmother passed away. He ghosted me. I got a blood clot. I had pink eye. I sprained my ankle. All these horrible things happened. And when I was in the hospital with a sprained ankle, I heard a voice in my ear that said, "You need to be your own knight in shining armor. Stop waiting for someone to come and save you, and save yourself." And I heard it. I literally heard that voice. And I said, okay, universe, God, whatever. I'm listening. Whatever I've done in the past hasn't worked, and I don't ever want to do any of that stuff again. That was terrible. That was so bad. I don't want to do that again. And so in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep doing it by myself. I needed a team. So I got a coach. I got a therapist. I got all the people that I needed. I changed my friendships. I changed so much about myself. And then all of a sudden, my life just started to go into a direction that I never could have imagined. And that's pretty much how I got to this place. But I mean, it was a very distinct moment of understanding.
I think that many of us have that moment, but we ignore it. I think we just turn it off. We don't want to listen to it because I think for some, if you're listening to us and this resonates with you, I can understand is that we think, oh, I can't do it, so just don't talk to me about it, right? We just think we can't do it, and really you can, like you said, you grabbed a team, like number one, you grabbed a team, but I'm going to step back. The first thing too that's important for us to all remember is that who is on your what I call your balcony. My friend Lisa and I would call it who's on your balcony with you, because they may not be the right people. And sometimes you need to audit that. You need to audit your balcony people and be like, you know what? That person doesn't serve me anymore. That person, is because you are who you surround you with. Like I don't remember where I read the stats at, but I remember when I was back with doing my weight loss journey where I lost over 60 pounds, I remember I read this thing that said who you surround yourself with is also going to affect your eating. And if you are out with people that socially eat that's their social thing, you're going to end up doing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so, I stopped at that article. I was like, well, who am I hanging out with? I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, so and so and so and so and so and so. But I was like, well, I really love our friendship. So what can I do to make the friendship work? Well, I started not going out and meeting them when they were going to go out to eat. I would do those things, and slowly, my balcony changed because they still were on this path of unhealthy eating. It just wasn't making me happy anymore to have to adjust my life so much to be with them. I wanted to be around people who wanted the same thing in life as me, and so I love that you remind us that, and we have to remember that if you're listening to us, is that getting, like you said, Stephanie, if you want to make a change, don't think you have to do it by yourself, because doing it by yourself is not easy and it's not fun. And so getting a coach like Stephanie, like myself, getting a mentor, somebody reaching out to a therapist, whatever that is, reach out to a friend, that's your first step to do. And like we said earlier, neither one of us want you to think you're alone, that you're by yourself. I mean, I go coach at a Mary Martha House, is the name of a nonprofit here in Tampa, Florida. And it's a beautiful home that's been created for the helping women that are between homelessness, maybe leaving, like we're talking about toxic relationships, trying to start that over, but have no place to go. And when I go and I coach them, I talk to them about how are you going to bounce forward? What work are you going to do today to bounce forward? And you have like literally the great thing about this organization is they have set them up with the support team. They have me as a life coach, they have a financial coach, they have a faith-based coach, they have a nutrition coach, they have all those things there. And so that goes to the example of you can't do it alone, you need a team. And so there, and if you feel like you can't afford it, there are resources out there as well to get help with. And you just got to look up locally for that resource and or reach out to us because you can we'll put everything in the show notes to reach Stephanie as well as myself. But I think it's really important so that you can find as Stephanie did that Shiro journey, that voice that you're hearing, that you can start listening to the voice. And I love that you listened to the voice finally. I mean, I know for me, especially with my parents, I really, really struggled because, again, they are my parents, but I kept going back. And every time I see Father Bill, he's not at our church anymore, but every time I see him, I tell him, God made your voice the one I needed to hear. Because he said to me, because my parents were in the middle of this divorce after 43 years of marriage, I felt like as a 40-year-old, I felt like I was being pulled in different directions, And he literally said, Pearl, we don't get to pick our parents. We love our parents, but it's your ball game of life. And he goes, and I know you love football. So however many people are in that field, if they don't belong on the field and they can't play by the rules of the game, they sit in the bench. And if you want to let them back in sometimes to see if they can play by the rules, it's okay. But if they don't, you can keep them on the bench and you can lock the fence if you need to. And for me, those are like what the words you heard, those are the words that I heard.
Mhm. I love that. And I'll add to that too, is that I will find, I've found out with clients too, is that when we don't listen to that voice, it gets louder and it gets worse. So, because I heard it was like that little whisper for a long time. This isn't right. You shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, shh, I don't want to hear you. I want to keep doing this. Like, oh, the marriage isn't working. Shh, I'm going to figure it out, and it was like the universe was like tapping me on the head, like, hello, hello, you have to fix it. And with all my health issues, all those things, it got louder and louder until I was like, okay, I give up. I'm going to listen. And luckily things got better. Like none of those things happen anymore. So it's actually way easier to listen to that than it is to ignore it and pretend like you don't hear it.
So and that's so true because you're right. It does get louder, louder, louder. So it says, "Hey, I'm here." So tell us now, Stephanie, what's life like for you today?
Well, it's like, I mean, it's completely different. I now have two beautiful children. I was a kid and I remember saying, I wanted to have a son and a daughter. And one of the things that I mourned because I didn't have children with my first, thank goodness, was that I might not be able to have kids. I was really, it was one of those things I said, I can't keep holding on to that. I have to just be happy that I didn't have kids with him. It was not the right decision, but maybe it just won't happen for me in this lifetime. And so I did. I mourned that. I dealt with all of that. But because I didn't go into a new relationship looking to, I have to have that, or I'm not going to be happy, or, whatever. And so I was able to find my best friend, to marry someone that understood me, that was wanting to help other people like I was. And him and I now work together with clients. And we have a boy and a girl, two beautiful kids. And we moved from New York to Texas. And so completely different environment. And life it's interesting. Those days where you're like, wow, this is really crazy. But the cool thing is that it's interesting, like out there, and you have to deal with the other stuff as opposed to being worried. Not that there's not communication that you have to like always do in relationships, but it's a different feeling when you know that here is okay. And then out there in the world is where you're going to have to deal with the most types of stress.
That is so beautiful. It's so, I mean, that, like you said, I'm very blessed. I mean, I'm so lucky. I couldn't have picked a better husband, a better father for our kids. And, it's such a beautiful thing. And it goes to say too, like when you start being like, okay, this is what I have, how do I make this work? That other things will come up, will come about and, they manifest in different ways for us. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's great. You guys are working together as well. I just love that. So for those that are listening to us, how do they find you, Stephanie? And also, I think you have some stuff happening, so share that with everybody too.
Yeah, sure. So if you go over to my website, which is beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com, it is the name of my book. It's the name of my website. If you go over to the courses section, there's actually some new mini courses that we created. And I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but if it's in February, there's one called Finding Love After Toxic Relationships. Definitely go check that out. There's also access to my private free Facebook group. And if you're saying to yourself, hey, this resonates, I think Stephanie kind of understands what I'm dealing with and I don't want to do this anymore, hop on a call. We don't even have to decide to work together. But if we can come up with a plan of what you need so that you can know exactly what steps you need to take in order to create the life that you want, to have that is such a freedom. And to know that there's support out there can really be such a freedom. So set that up. It's called a breakthrough call. Click on that link, set it up. And if there's anything else that's on there, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help. We are here to serve.
Yes, and hopefully this I believe this will be on time. So like Stephanie said, everything will be in the show notes. You can reach out to her. Make sure you just continue to follow her and everything as well. I think that we could go on and on with this whole conversation about toxic. There's so many different realms in our life and different relationships that can really affect us in our life. And so I'm so glad we had this conversation today. I love how your story has ended. I want to thank you for sharing your Shiro journey with the others as well. It's very much appreciated. And so before we let Stephanie go, we did let her know ahead of time that we have our Better Questions, Better Life cards that we're going to do. So these cards, if you want, I don't get nothing back from it. You can go look betterquestionsbetterlife.com. But I journal with these. I take a picture and carry one on my phone sometimes, just different things in the middle of the day. If I just need to like take a break and take that pause, I'll pull one out and just do a meditation or something over it. So Stephanie, you tell me when to stop shuffling and we'll tell you what the card says. So here we go.
All right, stop.
All right. So your card says, what deed of mine today do I want to see multiplied?
Hmm. Well, okay. The first thing that comes to mind is that I have been looking to work with more lawyers, divorce lawyers, and people in like the HR department for like their wellness program to help people that are going through divorce. I've been really focused on that, and if that can multiply, all I keep thinking about is the amount of people that could get help and not feel so alone. If we could get like work with companies so that we are an automatic service to help them out, how cool would
Yeah.
that be? So that's what I would love for that to multiply.
Well, we're just
Not
going
just,
to
and
put
it's
that
not
out there
selfish.
right now. So
It's a big picture.
if you are somebody a lawyer or you are somebody with HR department, I think it's that it's so important. It's one of the things I talk about too. I'm in my process of getting my grief coaching certification, and that's one of the areas too that I've talked to a couple of women who they go back to work. I mean, loss is heavy for everybody, and I don't there's no title for the loss of a child, and it's just not a club I would want anybody to join me in. And at the same time, like when luckily I work, I'm a self-employed person, so I work from home and things like that. But I know some that have to go back to work like a week, 2 weeks later, like they don't have a lot of time off, especially they don't have any vacation time, depending on what kind of job they have. And so, like when they go back to work, some cases I remember talking to somebody, she's a professional woman, she was, I have to dress up like, professionally, and I just want to go in jeans and a t-shirt if I have to. Like we need to create that space. We need to create that education for companies to understand you want them to come back to work, but you have to understand there's the life before, and that's the employee before, and there's your employee after. And
Yeah.
it's two different people. And how do you help them come back to what you need and creating that safe space? So I love that. I hope we multiply that for you. I hope that HR companies hear that for you and lawyers, because I think it will be a powerful, you're right, reach many more people. So for sure. So we've manifested that right now. So
Thank you, universe. I'm putting it
yeah.
out there to the universe.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming. I want to remind everybody that you need to like and share and subscribe below. And also, if you are somebody who's needing, want to just kind of come and join a group of women, we'd love to invite you to Shira League. Just go to wsliving.com and look up the Shira League, and we would love to invite you to come for a visit. But in the meantime, I want to remind you that you come into this world, you are this hard, hard oyster. You have to work at opening it. The oyster's not very easy to open, but as you open it, you're going to find your inner pearl to greatness. And I hope you go out today and you find your inner pearl to greatness. Thank you for joining us. Hey, everybody. I am so glad you joined us today on Soulful Self-Care Conversations. That was such a great conversation with Stephanie today. I just love her Shiro journey. And why do I love her Shiro journey? I love it because she's right. Being loved shouldn't hurt. And like her story, she's taken it and she's been able to create something beautiful out of it. But one thing that really resonated with me is hearing that voice inside. Like she heard that voice said, "You need to be your shining armor. You know, save yourself. You need to take care of you." And I just want to remind you guys of that. Like, how does home feel in your heart? How does it feel right now as you hear me say that? How does it feel in your heart? And if it doesn't feel good in your soul, if you feel like you need some help and guidance on that, as we were just sharing on the podcast, just remember you can always reach out to me at wsliving.com. You can schedule a free call with me and we can talk about what the roadmap looks like to your journey for the year and becoming that better version of yourself, whether it's changing relationships, whether it's changing relationship with yourself, or just learning to say yes to you and no to others. I would love to help you with that and just hop on a call with you. So again, I hope you guys got a lot out of the episode today with Stephanie, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Take care.